a podcast about amazing people from an incredible state. Amazing Arizonans with Mike Broomhead.
Another edition of Amazing Arizonans, and we sit down with the CEO of the Fiesta Bowl, and it's Erik Moses. Thanks for doing this.
I appreciate it. You know what? I'm actually very humbled that I get to be on the show called Amazing Arizonans, because this is going into year 3 for me living in the state, and so does this mean I get to call myself an Arizonan now?
Listen, of course you do. Listen, if you're connected to the Fiesta Bowl, you are deeply entrenched in Arizona.
I love it.
And we've talked about this on the air on the radio show, but there's a lot I'd like to get into. But I want to start with you. Big switch coming here. You know, you had a really good career, NASCAR. I mean, you were involved in some really big things. What was it that made you want to come to this organization?
Well, I had my own pretty vivid Fiesta Bowl memories, and not because I played in any. I wish I had that kind of talent. Just as a college football fan, you know, Tommy Frazier against Florida, 70 yards down the sideline, breaking what seemed like 100 tackles. Yeah. 2007, Boise State versus Oklahoma, hook and ladder play, Statue of Liberty, all of those things. I mean, you know, so I grew up kind of watching the Fiesta Bowl, not really knowing very much about Arizona at all, but certainly understanding the place that this game has in kind of the college football landscape. And that was really important, and it's an exalted place. And so, you know, I was honored by the opportunity to be able to come here and lead this organization. When
we used to watch it growing up where I did in South Florida, there was a mystique about Arizona. It was a Wild West, and when it was played at ASU, that mountain where the stadium's literally cut into the mountain, and that whole thing, it was we didn't do very well. I know we're going to end up having to talk about this. My Miami Hurricanes have not fared well, but it always was a game. There were certain games everybody watched. The Rose Bowl is one of them, of course. The Orange Bowl was one of them, but the Fiesta Bowl very quickly became a game that everybody wanted to watch, and it was the mystique of Arizona. And then, you know, with Wild West, it was not nearly as big of the valley as it is now, and it's just turned into something spectacular.
Well, and the folks who are to be credited for that are the Arizonans, the 9 founders, and the other hundreds, if not thousands of people since 1971 who have worked and given their time, talent, and their treasure to support this organization and help to put this game in the highest level of college football.
What's interesting about that, and I don't know how much of this you want to comment on, is that they started this bowl game because they were tired of Arizona State being passed over for bowl games, that they wanted to highlight the state, but they wanted to make sure Arizona State football got some recognition. How ironic that the first time that we've expanded these playoffs and the 4 seed is Arizona State.
Yeah, it would have been a bit of a Disney kind of a storybook Cinderella thing if the Sun Devils ended up in our game in the first year of an expanded playoff. You know this, but maybe those watching don't know. The Big Ten champion, Oregon, goes to the traditional tie for the Big Ten, which is the Rose Bowl. The SEC champion, Georgia, goes to the traditional tie, which is the Sugar Bowl. And we have no traditional ties to conferences.
Right.
So the third-ranked conference champion, Boise State, earns the opportunity to play closer to home. And Phoenix is closer to Idaho than Atlanta is. And so that's how it happened. And so, but just so excited about ASU being back in prominence and pursuing a national championship.
And how much they deserve. You know, what Coach Dillingham has done is remarkable, not just in the wins and losses, but in culture. From the minute for me, it was Mario Cristobal coming home to be the head coach of the Miami Hurricanes. But Dillingham grew up here, coached high school football here, did all of these different things here. And when he got hired at that press conference with tears in his eyes, this place is special. And then going out and saying to all the alumni, come back, get money in the collective. He just seems to be the right guy sold out to the program. I love the story.
Right guy at the right time. I was listening this morning to sports radio, and they were talking about Kenny was doing a press conference and talking about how they have players currently in the transfer portal, but yet they're playing in the bowl game and in the playoff games. If there is not a stronger testament to the culture and to the loyalty that kids have to him and to that program, you've already made a decision that you're going to pursue your football career at another place next season, but you're going to see this season out. I can't think of a stronger testament to the program.
And his words to say, it's our job to help these kids. And if they want to play, they want to be a member of the team, why wouldn't we? Shows that mutual loyalty. You know, the old saying that they don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Absolutely.
And I love what he's done. I love his story. I don't know him, but I know people that are very close to him that say that's the real guy. That's who he's always been. And I'm just happy for the success. I love Arizona State. You know, I'm a Hurricane, as we keep talking about, but I love that the program is getting some recognition, and hopefully with the massive numbers of alumni that are out there, that this starts some momentum for this program.
Well, I saw him down in Dallas at the Big 12 championship, and, you know, my flight was full of Sun Devils going down there. And so I think this is great for the Valley. I think it's great for our state. I think it's great for ASU. I think Kenny's approach, you could call it a player's coach, right? Because to your point, he cares about the individuals. Very similar to what you saw with Calipari when he was at Kentucky for hoops, right? Remember his famous quote when they asked him about Derrick Rose, whether or not he should turn pro? And his quote was, if Derrick Rose cares about me and my family and our well-being, he'll stay. If he cares about him and his family, he'll go, right? And that's why Cal kept getting the best talent, because guys know you're not just using them as fungible kind of cogs in your wheel. You actually care about them, their development, and their maturity. I think Kenny is putting out the same kind of energy.
You look at Dan Campbell in Detroit, and that same kind of we're in this together, and I just am here to hear that speech that they've aired so many times on TV at practice, where he's saying, trust the process, just trust me. I've got your best interest. I want you to be great. You've got to trust me. If we didn't have to do this, I wouldn't be making you do it, but we have to. And that you can watch the look on these young men's faces. They would just do anything believing that coach has their best interest in mind.
Well, look, Kenny is, and I say this respectfully, but he isn't that much older than a bunch of those kids in the charge, right? And so that connection, I think, is even more important now, given the changes to college football. And some might say the empowerment of the student athlete in this new system. Having a coach that gets you, that understands the thinking, and that you can relate to, I think is going to be critically important to every single program in this country.
Well, in the whole university, because was it at the end of the BYU game where he was being interviewed on the field, and he said to whoever was interviewing, I think it was that game, he looked around at the kids, the students on the field, and said, I used to be these guys jumping around. And he relates to everybody, and everybody relates to him. And I just think the reason why I'm such a big fan of college football is still watching these young men live the dream of playing the game of football. I was concerned about NIL making it too much of a profession. But what it's done is it's allowed schools to go out there and get players. And I don't know how it's going to end up, and I don't want to talk about the politics of it. But watching these young men play for the love of the game is still fantastic to me.
Well, look, I think the coaches that figure out how to relate to the players in this new environment where you will have a salary cap, players will get compensated to play, how you can keep those guys in your program feeling as though you're providing the best environment for them to learn, to mature and develop and have a shot at the next level, but also that they're coming away from their years at your institution with learnings that are not just in the meeting room and on the field, but that are going to help them be better people. Those that figure that out are going to be successful in this new format.
What's interesting is your perspective on leadership, because reading through your bio and learning, getting to know you and learning a little bit about you, you are sought after as a leader, and you've led some big organizations. Who instilled that in you? Where did you get that leadership quality? Where do you think that comes from?
My parents. I mean, they had high expectations for us. I'm fortunate that we've got some pretty stupendous leaders in kind of my lineage. We've talked about this, I think, before. The reason University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill was the only place that I ever applied was because my grandmother's brother integrated that school at the law school after our Supreme Court case in the early 1950s, right? And so he was a leader at the time. My grandfather was a captain in the Army and got his master's degree at NYU back at a time when black men probably weren't going to schools like that. My grandmother had a master's degree too. The expectation about education was there, and about not being afraid to be yourself, your authentic self, and to care about not only yourself, but about other people around you. That's just something that is instilled in our family.
What happens sometimes is when there is a great leader in a family, the family continues to just follow. And when doors are opened, you walk through the open door. But you seem like someone that feels like because the door was opened for you, that you got to kick the door open for other people. Because I went to the luncheon this year, and we've talked about this a couple of times because it impresses me so much. What you did with the high school athletes and the preseason all-star team and the flag football players and bringing them in and make them feel the importance of what they were doing. I just thought that was an amazing addition to this game, the college football atmosphere, but the game itself, I thought that was fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot. Yeah, I'm at the point in my career and in my life that I want to give back to others, and I want to help them, whether they're, inclusive of my two sons, but other people's kids. I want to help them to figure out where the landmines are and how they can get to where they want to go. If they're willing to put in the time and the energy and the effort and live their lives in a particular way with integrity, with honesty, candor, and authenticity, I want to be helpful. And so I want to do that in every part of my life, and especially in my professional life. And I want to run organizations that care about doing that. And that's what I've tried to instill in every place that I've been.
I was just watching a video today, and it was one of those Instagram videos, and it was Tom Cruise getting an award from the Navy. It was their highest civilian award. And so here he is in a room full of servicemen and women. And he said, you all understand this. To lead is to serve. And I thought, what a concise way of putting that. But I've watched this organization, your organization, before you got here, live it. But it seems like, I don't know that the public can understand until you start to talk about it. The parade means so much to people and always has. The 2 bowl games now that are here means so much to the economy, and it's kind of the Chamber of Commerce view of the Valley. But it's the work that's done for the nonprofits and for the school teachers, and that's where you are really changing lives.
Yeah, look, I feel privileged that we get to, as a vocation, work in sports and live events. And that we can draw a direct line between the dollars that we raise, the stuff that we do for a living, and positive impact on real people in the state of Arizona. The $1.25 million we give to teachers through our Palo Verde Wishes for Teachers program, it's not a whole lot of money in terms of the need, but it's getting things started. And for those 500 teachers that receive that $2,500 grant each, I mean, the number of tears you see and hear when you make that phone call, there is nothing that warms your heart more than knowing that those people who are underpaid and underappreciated, who have such an important role to play in the development of our young people who are going to be the leaders of our society moving forward, that they're so appreciative of what otherwise is not a huge amount of money. It just tells you that there's a need there, and we all need to chip in.
And you know that they were persevering, and they would have persevered had they not got that phone call. But I was watching the stories at the luncheon again, and there was one of those coaches that stuck out to me where she was spending her own money, and she was running out of money. And that money came in so she could buy the equipment so that her players could play. I believe she was a flag football coach. Yeah. And that her players could play the game they love, and she could continue to influence those players. And I thought, you're right, it's not a ton of money, but the significance was you care. Somebody cared enough, and it seemed like it just lifted that program up.
And what do we all need as young people, especially as teenagers? For as many people as possible to tell us that we're important and that we support you and that we care about you, especially in this crazy world we live in right now where teenagers are not getting those messages. People aren't getting those messages enough.
And you look at it, I know this is getting too philosophical about things, but I love sports now as an adult because when I was coaching my little brother because we didn't have a father in the home, and I looked up to the coaches that taught me how to coach. And I coached with one guy. He was the best head coach I'd been around, and he said to these kids, you are going to learn to win with grace and lose with dignity. And I thought if that's one life lesson that those kids take for the rest of their lives, there's the accountability, there's teamwork, there's all those life lessons that when it's done right, the memories extend far beyond the playing field.
This is the reason why if you interview HR people at big corporations and small companies all around the country, they say they look for college athletes because of those lessons that you learn through athletics. And you and I both know that football teaches those lessons, I think, in ways that maybe even other sports don't, because of the physicality of it.
Right.
Because you're putting yourself on the line for your brother or your sister, because you're making certain that you got to make that block so you can free up your teammate for that touchdown. So that doesn't mean that you get the glory, but the team wins because you put yourself in a position to help contribute to the whole.
One of the stories I told, and I'll be very brief about it, was I think I lost a brother in Iraq. My brother was the quarterback of the football team, 2 years younger than me. Quarterback of the football team, undefeated his senior year, was just a typical American. When he was killed at his funeral, two of the guys he served with told us the story, and they said, Tom took care of us, and he always looked out for us. And it was a longer story. 5 years later, I got a call from a guy I didn't know from Southwest Florida named Bruce, and he said, I was a freshman on the football team when Tom was a senior. It was 1987. This was 2005, almost 20 years later. And he said to me, Tom always looked out for us. Tom took care of us. And they got our high school football field named after my brother. And the significance of that for my brother would have been the biggest compliment he ever received. But it was those lessons of you got to be where you're supposed to be. And that guy next to you has to know you're doing your job. And that's one of the reasons why I love this game so much.
Well, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
When you, at what age when you were younger, what pushed you in the direction that you were going to go? College, but what pushed you in the directions in your life? Because you could have gone anywhere, right?
Yeah. You mean in terms of picking a college, or just what I decided
in
to
life?
do
In life, what drove you to the successes you've had?
I give my parents and my family all of the credit for that. There were people who value education, who value integrity, who value doing the right thing at the right time, who held us accountable, who had high expectations of us. But even better than that, what my parents instilled in me and my sister in particular was they made us grow up in an environment where no one's expectations of me will ever be higher than my own expectations of myself. And so if you are pushing yourself to achieve more, to do more, to be better, to be more self-aware, Scott will tell you, I'll come off of this interview and go, how did I do? What could I have done better? What have you? That self-awareness, which can be so hard to find these days in people generally, I think is kind of one of the secrets. It doesn't matter what my title is or where I sit in the organizational chart. I want to get better. And I want to inspire other people to want to get better and to push themselves in that way so that I don't have to look over them and go, well, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z, that they're doing it to themselves, because that'll always be a bigger motivator.
And I think what I've seen, what little bit I've seen, is when you want to make yourself better, the people around you naturally want to be better as well. They're not just pushing you to be better. They want to keep up.
Yeah, I tell people, when I'm doing staffing and trying to put a team together, just like you, I want rock stars.
Yeah.
Like, I want people who want to go at the highest level. But I also want people who are coachable. You don't have to start off as a rock star. But if we can see something and you see it in yourself where you can be that, then my job is to help inspire that. It's to help clear the path and provide some lessons and some accountability and responsibility and growth opportunities to help you get to that level. And it's hard work, but it's so worthwhile, because then maybe that person ends up opening a door for my kid or my grandkid or something like that. And we keep passing it on. And, it sounds kind of corny, but it's, we should all seek to kind of give back in that way.
Yeah. One of the great things about working in this building is because of our news team, we have a connection to Cronkite. So we have all these young interns that come in here, and then some of those interns end up getting hired. From working around brilliant young people where they may not see the potential, but you see in them, this person's going to be amazing, and then watch them grow into something great. It's not anything I would do, but watching the other people mentor them and watching someone come into their own. I think that's just a privilege to watch that happen.
Well, and to be able to play even a small part in shaping that person and their future. Like, think about what's the most valuable thing I have to offer to anyone, my kids included, is my accumulated experience and hopefully wisdom from having lived, years.
Because hopefully they get to learn lessons from me without necessarily having to go through those exact same lessons. And that just accelerates your learning curve and gets you up a learning curve so much faster when you can learn from the experiences of others and not just having to bump your head, stub your toe, and do all the things that maybe we had to do to learn those lessons the way that we did.
And there's a difference between the person that says you have to listen to me because I'm your boss and fostering a relationship in someone where they seek out advice. There's a big difference. And there are very few people that get it right like that, you know?
And people have to know that you care about them as an individual,
Sure.
not just as a member of an organization or a team that is expected to produce a certain output and do certain things. Like, you know, I want to know, is everything okay at home? I want to know, what can I do to be helpful to you generally? I've told people, and again, Scott knows this, I've told people, you might work for me and I might make you aware of another job opportunity. I won't do that because I'm trying to get rid of you. I'll do that because I might think that that's the next step in your career projection that you should consider. We're not pushing you out, but I'm thinking about you in a way that is broader than the purpose you serve for me in the organization that we happen to be working in.
When you look at this organization you are in now, you said you always want to be better. What are some areas that you look at and think, man, we're really good here, but imagine if we could be what we could be? Are there areas you're still pushing?
Always. I think as a live events production company, you can always get better at what you do. You can always be more engaging. You can always provide more creativity and more innovation. Again, thank you for your comments about our football kickoff event. But, you know, we've changed that event 2 years in a row. And we'll continue to kind of push the envelope on that to make it as engaging an annual event as it can be. So I think on the live event side, it's that. You know, we're known for our world-class hospitality. You can always tweak that and make it a little bit better. You can always give more of that kind of concierge, white glove service to those key constituents, and hopefully that is felt by everybody who interacts with us. You can always treat people better, frankly. And so I think those are the things that I would point to right now. I want to give more money away. I want to help to invest more in organizations that are serving our community all across the state. I want to engage more with Native communities all across the state. I want to engage more with Spanish-speaking and Hispanic communities all across the state because I think we need to. I think it makes sense. And I think it'll help us and this state in the long term when everyone feels engaged in the kind of work that we're doing, which is not just about producing football games.
And what's fascinating is, even as big as these games are, the talent that is on the field at the Fiesta Bowl, the majority of those kids will never play another down of football after their senior year in college. But they will carry with them the memories that were created by their coaches, of course, but by organizations like yours that treat them as if they are legitimate superstars and this is your week, not just your day. Your week in the sun. You deserve the recognition. You deserve to be treated as well as you're being treated, and never forget how great you were this week. I love that about those young men and women, the girls that come too.
I do too, and this is the reason why the expansion, I'm a little torn about the expansion because the teams that play in the playoff are staying in those communities for a much shorter time than they would have normally, right? Because it's not intended for the winner to be the last game of your season. And so our opportunities to provide that education and that exposure to those young people, many of whom know nothing about this state, know nothing about our communities, and our opportunities to get them out into the community, interacting with young people and nonprofits and people who care about this state is curtailed quite a bit because of this new format. On the Rate Bowl side of things, that's still a traditional kind of bowl experience, and we're definitely leaning into that. But we're going to have to be, you talked about enhancements, we're going to have to be creative about how do we still give that bowl experience to the CFP, participants of our game at the Verbal Fiesta Bowl.
And I'm glad you mentioned the Rate Bowl because it's not just because I'm such a college football fan. It is something that because the Fiesta Bowl, the Verbal Fiesta Bowl is so big, that the Rate Bowl isn't talked about enough. What it does in downtown Phoenix, that atmosphere, but what it does for those football programs that are coming here too, playing in that stadium and traveling. And I remember as a Pop Warner football player going somewhere to play in a Pop Warner bowl game. I'm 57 years old. I don't mind saying it. I remember those games when I was 12 and 13 years old. They're unforgettable experiences.
Yeah, I think, we're fortunate to have a national game that helps to determine the national champion. The Rate Bowl is a national game as well, nationally broadcast, all of that. This year we've got an 8-4 Kansas State team against a 7-5 Rutgers team. These are successful football teams,
yes,
that are looking to end their season on a high note. But that game really, again, thinking about how we can be better, that game needs to be a local game. Yes, there will be travel parties that come in to, see their teams play. But that game is the one where we're saying to all the state championship football teams and other teams, come on out. We want you there in your jerseys. We want to use this as an opportunity for the Arizona Youth Football League to do a parade pregame so that those kids that won a championship get some more visibility. This is going to be another tool for us to shine the spotlight on local people and young people and athletes, our teachers of the year, all of those folks. We use the Rate Bowl as a platform to give them more visibility. And I would hope that folks would come out and support us because of that. One, you're going to see a great football game, but two, that game in particular really gives back and highlights our community. One
of the great things about Arizona, I came here first in 1992 for a visit, and I fell in love, and I moved here in 95. It is, there are a couple of places in the country that do it. I think Texas does it. If you're a Texan or you're not. Unless you were born there, you're not. But the pride for Arizona, for this state, they love an Arizona-centric event, whether it's the WM Phoenix Open or it's any of these events that we do here, Barrett Jackson, that people turn out. And my rodeo world, the Scottsdale, Rodeo Scottsdale, those events that Arizona really loves to take ownership. And you're right, that bowl game atmosphere where you are a community event is something I think people would pour out for.
Yeah, and we've got to do a better job of engaging them and communicating in that way. I will say, and I think I said this to you before, Mike, I've never lived in a place where business and civic leaders and others have been so committed to giving back. If you just think about Yellow Jackets, Thunderbirds, Charros, Diablos, all of these groups that give so much of their time, talent, and treasure to organizations and causes all throughout the state. I've never lived in a place where you've seen that. You'd have your Rotary clubs and chambers of commerce and that kind of stuff. But we have that and we have these other clubs. And so what I've learned in my short time being in Arizona is that, we're the 48th state. We're a relatively new state. And we're a place that a lot of people, majority of population in this country is on the East Coast and maybe the West Coast, don't know anything about. And so I think people have taken it upon themselves to educate others about this state, about why it's special, to come together and bond together, to be able to communicate that story. And it affected, obviously, people like you who got here and were so impressed and decided a few years later to come back. I've told you the story about my first year being here, meeting 4 different people who tied their residency in Arizona to coming to a Fiesta Bowl game, including Ken Kendrick, who owned the Diamondbacks.
Right.
And so just think about the impact that we're able to have with these large-scale events. And I don't think there's any state or city in the country that does large events better than Phoenix.
No, I was so impressed in watching the Super Bowl happen. And I was at the Super Bowl experience that we broadcast from there. And to watch how they work downtown Phoenix to a game that's in Glendale and the way that the whole community, security and providing hospitality and everything else, it's incredible. But if you take the lineage back of leadership, or you talk about great leaders, you look at guys like a Jerry Colangelo, who led the way in giving back in the community. And it was almost a standard that if you have got the privilege of being an executive and you're a business leader and you've got a big paycheck, but you've also got an important platform, use it somewhere. Derek Hall is a Thunderbird, and Derek Hall is the president of the D-backs. Your organization and the people that you have that wear the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, I will tell you that I think of sports organizations as part of the public trust, because the effect that we have on people's lives is an outsized effect to the overall importance that we have in the society and the community. What Apple does, what TSMC is going to be doing, what the Banner Hospital and other organizations do is way more important than putting on football games, basketball games, hockey games, whatever it is. but you don't see people walking around wearing, Amazon shirts and things of that nature, but you do see them wearing sports teams and Fiesta Bowl jerseys and things of that nature because people really care about this stuff. And that gives us an opportunity to affect people's lives and to solicit their help to make the place that we all live a better place because of that emotional attachment that they have to these sports teams and sporting events. And I take that very, very seriously, as I know Derek and Josh and Mr. Bidwell and others do as well.
And for that, in that same vein, the expectations when the TSMCs come here and the other companies come here, just like you found out, there's an expectation that when you come here as an executive and you're running an organization, that there's going to be a community buy-in and investment, that the other people you're going to be at that highest level with are already invested. There's an expectation, and you find out the joy of actually being involved in the community work.
Well, and it's part of helping to maintain this virtuous cycle, right? So we put on football games and other events that people pay to experience. We take part of those, those profits, and we pour that back into communities that help and that serve the residents of Arizona, who are going to be the employees of those new companies, who are going to be the government officials, who are going to be the residents and the school teachers and the firemen and the policemen. It creates a virtuous cycle. And so my view on that is, if you're a company or a corporation that's in the valley or anywhere in the state, you shouldn't feel like you have to be a sponsor of one of these events or one of these teams, but you should want to, especially organizations like ours, because we are helping those teachers who are going to help to educate those young people who one day will hopefully be your employees.
I keep thinking in my head, all right, I got one more question, and then it makes me think of something else. At the kickoff luncheon, you had Larry Fitzgerald this year. And I watch events because usually I'm the MC at a lot of events, military veteran events, police events. And it was fun to watch Bickley on stage, it hassled by Larry. But I watched how those young high school players were glued to every word he said. And it seemed to me, just my perception, is he understood in that moment the importance of his role in every word he said to those young people. That's the stuff that you do that I think people need to appreciate more. Was an event like that taking care of the details for every person in that room. I was there as a spectator. I got more than I thought I was going to get. Those high school players got more than they thought they were going to get. I guarantee you, Larry got more than he thought he was going to get. That takes a special kind of planning to take account of everybody that's there.
Well, we have a fantastic team that brings those events to life. It helps when you have somebody as special as Larry, who's not only a superstar for what he did on the field, but is so engaged off the field and takes all of this very seriously. I mean, before the event started, he spent at least 30 minutes, if not longer, talking to the young people, to the All-State preseason teams, taking pictures with them, answering all their questions until they didn't have any more questions. I mean, how often is a Hall of Famer going to take his time to spend time with 16, 17, 18-year-olds answering all of their questions and imparting knowledge to them about life, not just about football, but about life. I remember him telling, somebody asked what advice he would give to the young people, and he said, 2 words, compound interest.
Yeah.
Right? Because now with NIL and kids having an opportunity to make money off their talent before going pro, they need to be thinking about things like that, about investing your money, about protecting your money and growing wealth. And that's something that certain of us that come from different communities or backgrounds don't learn about until, I won't say it's too late, but certainly not as early as you'd like to. And so Larry is super special. We were just in Las Vegas for the National Football Foundation College Hall of Fame, where he went in, and I'm sure a Yellow Jacket is coming soon. But that guy is super special.
I was reading a magazine back when you read magazines on the airplane, and they had quotes from famous athletes and best advice they ever got. And Edgar and James. Ooh, I got a very special quote from my heart for Edgar and James. But Edgar and James said the best advice he got was from another, and I can't remember which player it was, save your money. And how many of the professional athletes end up with no money because they spend it as if it's never going to run out. And that's when you see people that are, as you said before, used for your talent. Because there isn't that concern for your long-term, after you leave the football field, are you going to be okay? The stories we've heard of William Perry, being broke, and the story of Dexter Manley leaving professional football as a Hall of Famer, a superstar, but he was illiterate, and he admitted it after his career was over that people weren't investing in the human being. They were only investing as much as they could get out of the player.
Yeah, it's the reason when I went to law school, I thought I was going to be a player agent because I wanted to protect people like that from unscrupulous managers, accountants, lawyers, agents, and also impart to them some knowledge around how you can protect this. I mean, if you think about it, even in a non-sports context, if you had somebody in your family who could be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and earn millions of dollars a year, you'd build an infrastructure around them to help them understand that great opportunity and the great responsibility. We weren't doing that around athletes, and we weren't doing that around student athletes. And part of the reason, and maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but I am, part of the reason was the NCAA rules, right? That wouldn't allow kids to have advisors that could help them figure that stuff out. Now I think it's the responsibility of the schools and of the families to ensure that we're building this scaffolding around these young people. So, okay, you've got $1 million NIL deal in college. You're not going to go out and buy a Lamborghini and a condo and this, that, and the other. You're going to save some of that money. And, oh, by the way, you're going to pay taxes at the end of the year. So we have to educate them. And that's, we call them student athletes. Well, the student part is not just in the classrooms, right? It's in the community. It's in life. And we owe it to those young people to educate them in that way, especially those guys like us who have gotten to an age where hopefully we've learned a few things and we want to art that. Yes, exactly.
When you there's a video of, and I don't know who the person is, you might know who it is, talking to a room full of young people. And so then I'm going to tell you the reality. So you get $500,000 or $1 million in an NIL deal or contract. Immediately the government's going to come in, and now you've got $600,000. And then this you're going to spend this money on, and that's what's going to happen. So you get an NIL deal for $300,000. You have a friend that says, you got $300,000, give me $50,000. So you say, okay, I'll do that. Well, all of a sudden, that's more than half the money that you really earned because of who you have to pay and what you have to pay. We don't give those lessons to people. And that's the issue is you take young men, or in this case, young men, but could be young women, and many of them come from humble beginnings. All of a sudden, they see a bunch of zeros at the end of a check. And then they don't realize that the lifespan for their career in sports when that big check comes in is, that big. And then they're back to where they were before if they haven't saved. They're out.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, look, my first real job as an adult was at a law firm after law school, right? And I remember calculating in my head what my check was going to be like. And I also remember the disappointment when I got that first check and calling my mom and going, where's the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we have to prepare these young people for those kinds of life lessons, which not every family sits around the dinner table talking about taxes and investments and annuities and 401k and retirement and all those kinds of 529 plans and all that kind of stuff. Again, I think we owe it to these young people to incorporate that into what we impart to them while they're in our charge at these colleges and universities and frankly high schools now.
Yeah.
And we'd love to be able to rely on parents and families to do that, but to your point, many come from humble beginnings where there is no reference point for these kinds of lessons.
And that's where the mentorship and that's where the concern for the human being, not just the athlete, comes in. And I love that. I just love that comes out of you that way. That I think people around you realize you care about them. And that's, you don't have to, you being the leader of the organization you're in, you're desired. I would want you to come in here anyway because of who you are in that jacket. But it's all the other things you bring in with it that makes me gravitate to every word you have to say on a topic.
Yeah, look, I want to be an authentic person. I want the people around me to be authentic. And I've always tried to lead with a caring heart. I still want to get things done, and we have to be accountable, and we have to push and all that kind of stuff. But I think we can do that in a way that shows a care and concern for people. And like I said earlier, to the extent that, people have to feel safe and supported in order to then give you their best all the time. If they're worried about, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job, or is the boss going to be mad, or that kind of thing, and they don't feel like they're being supported and they're walking around in fear, you're not going to get the best out of them. And so I want to create environments where people feel that they're supportive, and not just because you gave me a great 8 hours today or 12 hours today, but because I care about you as an individual and as a person, and care enough to be candid with you when you're doing the right thing, to give you the attaboys, and when you're missing the mark, to say, hey, we got to get better in this way, and let me help you, not just for what you can do for this organization, but for what this lesson may do to help you in the rest of your career or, frankly, in your life.
Last question, promise this time.
It's all good.
Legacy. Legacy for your family, legacy for where you were before you were here, but legacy here as well. What is your hope that you leave behind for people to remember?
I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. I want to be known as somebody who got the most out of his meager talents, but who gave back to people and cared about people. I tell people at this stage of my life, really friendships and being around people I love and respect is the most important thing for me. And I try to lead in a way that is similar to the way that I am with my friends and loved ones. And simply that is, I tell people, I want my friends and partners to think about me when I'm not in the room. And that's who I want to be for them. I want you to matter enough to me that if I see something, encounter an opportunity or a lesson or something that I think Mike would want to know about that, let me send him a text and tell him about that, right? Like that's the way I want to be known as. I feel like I'm the best friend that people can have because I'm super loyal. I want to be known for that, and I want to be known for somebody who gave back to other people and cared about other people and did the most with, like I said, his meager talents.
Well, I think you've definitely hit the mark with that, and I wouldn't say your talents are meager, but you have definitely left an impact, and you've only been here a short amount of time compared to many others. You know what I didn't ask you, so I got to do this. Top 3 athletes. You believe in your lifetime, top 3 athletes. Everybody wants to fight over number 1.
Cross sports. Whew. Okay, so I'm going to go by, what I experienced, not what I know about. So Michael Jordan. I won't go all Carolina guys. So I was going to say Lawrence Taylor, but I'll say Barry Sanders.
Okay.
And I will say, this is controversial, but Barry Bonds.
Really?
Yeah, I was going to go Reggie Jackson, who was my first sports idol. But Barry Bonds was a hell of a baseball player, man. And we could argue about, drugs and whatever and all of that. Steroids don't help you hit a curveball. And that guy, if you look at his career before he went to the Giants, what he did with Pittsburgh.
See, I have something a little more controversial on that topic of when you say talking about the steroid usage, because anybody that ever complains about that, every guy that's ever complained about it should never ever use Viagra. It's just like steroids. It makes some people in the performance. It makes some people a superstar to keep some people in the game. But you got to be a superstar to start with. Get Scott over there with his face.
That's the best.
So I would tell you, I'm amazed that Bo Jackson wasn't in there.
You said 3. Bo is...
I put him number 1.
Best athlete? Mm-hmm. Probably. If we're just going all around athlete, okay, Bo, Deion, and Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah.
High jumper, ran track, could wrestle it, could do anything, and was a giant.
Yeah.
Those 3 guys, unbelievable.
The reason why I asked the question is it's a football thing that made me think of it, is we're watching right now an athlete in the NFL and Josh Allen doing things it's only been a short span right now, but doing things that seem almost like to be that big, to be that fast, to be able to do those things. The athletic ability, the talents of some people, if they don't have a work ethic to go with it, there's no way they achieve what they achieve. But they're high achievers, like you said at the beginning of this, in their mind that they always want to be better. And that's what amazes me about those superstars.
Josh is crazy. Physically gifted, arm talent, can run around you or over you. Has the game here too. I think it's great. And that point reminds me of, our Heisman Trophy winner, who I keep saying to people, this guy, he's probably not that much bigger than I am. He doesn't weigh as much as I do, I'm sure. Is taller. Travis Hunter, this guy playing the number of snaps that he plays on offense and defense and being the standout on both sides of the ball and doing it at altitude.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize he's doing that at altitude. Like, the guy must never get tired. It's the most amazing thing that I've ever seen, and I'm glad he's getting his flowers now. I don't know how that works in the NFL. I think he ends up being a cornerback that also has packages on offense.
Like his head coach.
Yeah, right? Like, and Deion didn't really do that really until starting, like, San Francisco and the Cowboys. He didn't do it much when he was with the Falcons, but I think that's what it works out. But some people, I mean, it's just like an embarrassment of physical riches and talent.
That's why I picked Bo Jackson at the beginning.
Yeah, it's great.
To watch him leave the baseball field and walk on and push what would eventually be a Hall of Famer, right, out of the starting position at running back.
Yeah. And to think that they had Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson in the same backfield is almost ridiculous. But that guy to be that big, that fast, to be able to, again, as Deion has said, I think maybe the hardest thing in sports is to hit a baseball, especially when it's coming at you at 90-plus miles an hour and it's got movement on it. And Bo did that, and the arm strength. And I mean, some people, it's just...
I see, what's more spectacular, the home runs he hit or the people he threw out from the wall in right field?
I think the people he threw out. I mean, to have a gun like that and the catch, it's crazy. I'm having fun watching Ellie Dela Cruz at Cincinnati, who's a big kid, not as powerfully built as Bo, but plays shortstop, got a gun for an arm, runs the bases crazy, is starting to hit for power and hopefully average soon. It's just great to see athletes like that playing sports like baseball, frankly, where we maybe used to not expect guys to be as athletically gifted as Ellie is or Shohei Ohtani is or some of these other guys. So it's well, thank you for the help, because how could I forget Bo?
But I appreciate the time. I'm sure you got 8 things to do still today. I could talk to you about sport. I could talk to you about anything all the time, but I love your passion for the game of sports, but for the life lessons that it brings with it. And so I appreciate everything that you're doing, and I can't wait to see what happens next. I really can't. I hope we'll stay in touch, because I would love to see what you guys are doing next and help talk about it on the air and let people learn more, because I think the more they learn about you personally, but about this organization, the more they appreciate the entire package and not just what they see on TV or in the stadium.
Well, you're stuck with me now.
I'm in. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, there you go.